Imagine stepping onto the floor of a chaotic, high-stakes stock exchange. But instead of trading commodities or, tech shares, the only currency changing hands is reputation.
Oh, wow. That sounds exhausting.
Right. You're navigating this volatile market where a well-timed pleasantry acts as this sudden infusion of capital. But a poorly calculated boast well that causes an immediate catastrophic run on the bank of your social standing.
Yeah, and in that kind of economic environment, you wouldn't just wander in and, hope for the bad. You'd be destroyed. You
Exactly.
would need an incredibly precise ledger, like a rule book that explains the complex mechanisms of inflation, market manipulation, and the very real threat of sudden bankruptcy.
Which brings us to our deep dive today. Welcome, everyone. We are opening up an ancient ledger of sorts. It's a highly specific survival guide for what its author calls the commerce of the world.
Yes, the commerce of the world. It's such a great phrase.
It really is. So, we're examining a digital artifact we pulled directly from the Internet Archive. It's an 1810 French etiquette manual titled On de bonne compagnie, which translates to the man of good company.
But the most remarkable part of our mission today isn't even the book itself, right?
Right. We aren't even reading the full text. We are pulling this complete psychological roadmap of 19th century high society entirely from its incredibly detailed, painstakingly categorized table of contents.
Which is just wild to me. The fact that an index alone can reveal the complete architecture of a society is astonishing.
Yeah.
It doesn't just list page numbers. It categorically breaks down the precise expectations, the required social agility, and the fatal pitfalls of interacting with other human beings in a highly stratified world.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because you, listening to this right now, might be wondering why a 200-year-old French index about dinner party etiquette actually matters to your life today.
Yeah, it sounds a bit niche at first glance.
It does. But as we decode these chapters, you're going to realize that the underlying machinery of human nature, our vanity, our desperate desire for status, and the sheer fragility of our egos, has not shifted a single inch.
Not one bit.
I mean, the outfits are different, the technology is obviously different, but the underlying commerce of the room, it's exactly the same.
It really is. And to understand that commerce, we have to start where the author starts, which, surprisingly, is not with conversation starters or table settings.
Right, it's way deeper than that.
Yeah, the index reveals that the absolute prerequisite for entering society is this rigorous internal architecture. The book demands an unalterable probity and a profound strength of soul, or forstam.
The text actually calls for a severe self-examination.
Exactly.
It essentially tells the reader that before you even think about walking into a ballroom or a dining room, you need an unwavering moral baseline.
Which sounds lovely.
It does. But then the index gives you total philosophical whiplash. In the very next breath, it pivots to the incredibly dark realities of this social scene.
Oh, yeah. It gets bleak.
Very. It warns the reader to be on guard against hypocrites of virtue, false honesty, and I love this phrasing, despicable maneuvering of some society people who rely entirely on false appearances.
Yeah, the author is outlining a massive paradox there.
Right.
You're instructed to cultivate this pure, unshakable virtue, but you're simultaneously warned that almost everyone you are about to interact with is basically running a sophisticated scam,
Exactly. The commerce of the world was largely built on counterfeit currency.
which must have been so stressful to navigate.
I look at this setup and I see a direct parallel to a cutthroat modern corporate environment. Like, think about a high-stakes industry networking event.
Oh, absolutely.
Everyone is smiling, everyone is projecting success, but everyone is also secretly calculating who has actual power and who is just ruthlessly playing the game to get ahead.
Yeah, everyone's got an agenda.
Right. Which actually makes me a bit skeptical of the author's true intentions here. It
Yeah.
seems to me that these rules aren't really about becoming a deeply moral, virtuous person.
Ooh.
How so?
Well, it feels more like a pragmatic Machiavellian survival guide for a toxic environment. Like, unalterable probity sounds less like a moral imperative and more like a strategy to just avoid getting caught in a lie.
What's fascinating here is the mechanics of why that inner strength was a literal survival tool. Because in 1810, there were no digital trails to verify someone's claims.
No LinkedIn to check.
Exactly. Your entire existence in high society relied purely on the consensus of the room. So the text demands a serious examination of rumors, of the desire to harm, and places this massive emphasis on envy.
Envy was huge.
It was the market force that constantly threatened to devalue your stock. If your reputation was built on false appearances, the first wave of envious gossip would just trigger a total collapse of your social standing.
Wow. So you needed the armor of genuine character simply to withstand the audit of public opinion.
You really did.
The text even notes that true merit isn't proven when things are easy. It highlights a remarkable resignation when struggling with misfortune. Like, anyone can project false honesty when the market is up. Right, when everyone likes you.
Exactly. It's only when the rumors start or a crisis hits that the room finds out if you actually have that strength of soul.
When you view it through that lens, unalterable probity isn't just about being good. It's basically the only asset that doesn't depreciate when the social market crashes.
That makes total sense. But possessing that inner strength is only the defensive strategy, right?
Yeah.
To actively participate in the commerce of the world, you had to master the primary currency of interaction.
And according to part 5 of the text, that currency is praise.
Yeah, the entire section is titled On Praises and Their Value, but the author treats praise like a highly dangerous radioactive substance. You have to handle it with extreme caution.
You really do.
The index warns about the thirst for praises, the danger of boasting, and it uses this incredibly evocative phrase, the perilous leap.
I love that phrase so much. The perilous leap captures the exact moment someone transitions from participating in a normal conversation to aggressively demanding validation.
Yeah.
By boasting, you're leaping into the air, completely abandoning your footing and forcing the room to decide whether to catch you or just let you hit the ground.
And the author clearly enjoyed watching people hit the ground.
Oh, for sure.
The disdain for braggarts in this index is just palpable. It specifically calls out people obsessed with pride of birth, individuals who continually cite their ancestors to establish their own worth.
Oh, what do they call them?
The index labels these people important people without importance.
That phrase is a brilliant diagnosis of unearned status. I mean, in a highly stratified society where lineage was supposed to mean everything, the author is brutally pointing out that relying on your dead ancestors means you lack any liquid social capital of your own.
You're coasting.
You're operating on borrowed credit, and the rest of the room knows it.
And we see the exact same behavior today.
Oh, complete.
You're at a dinner party, and someone won't stop name-dropping the Ivy League school they went to 20 years ago, or the famous CEO they briefly met in an elevator.
Right, they're trying to prove they're important.
Yeah, but they're really just broadcasting their own insecurity. The text also takes a swing at people who boast of their restraint, which is basically the 1810 equivalent of the humble brag.
Yes. Oh, it's just such a burden being this modest and virtuous.
Exactly.
Humble brag is an attempt to manipulate the market, right? To extract praise without appearing to ask for it. But the text sees right through it.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
In a society that's this competitive, where people are actively trying to destroy you with envy, doesn't it make sense to talk yourself up a little bit? Like, if you don't promote your own accomplishments, aren't you just going to fade into the background while those important people without importance monopolize the room?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, self-promotion was considered a massive strategic vulnerability. The text highlights the profound dangers of insidious praises that actually cause blindness. Yeah, a kind of social blindness. It points to historical examples like Mehmed II and Pythagoras to illustrate how flatterers of princes and eternal flatterers did catastrophic damage.
Oh, wow.
When you thirst for praise, you are handing the people around you the exact blueprint for how to manipulate you. You become blind to reality because you're addicted to the validation.
Ah, I see. You're essentially giving away the remote control to your own ego.
Exactly, which is the total opposite of strength of soul. True social power for the man of good company relied heavily on the utility of restraint.
Right.
So instead of demanding the spotlight, you master the complex art of praising others. You architect the social dynamic. By distributing praise carefully and accurately, you become the person everyone relies on for their social validation.
That is so strategic. You control the currency, which makes you incredibly powerful, yet untouchable by envy. That completely reframes the whole concept of the polite dinner guest. You aren't just sitting there being quiet and agreeable. You are quietly acting as the central bank of the room, dispensing validation where it serves you best.
Yeah, it's a very active role.
But obviously, managing your ego with that level of clinical precision is difficult. And the text dedicates part 6 to outlining exactly what happens when people succumb to that thirst for praise and fail to exercise restraint.
Right, it maps out the resulting flaws of the mind and heart. And this section reveals a highly structured view of social failure. The way the author categorizes these flaws provides a really sharp look into the mechanics of the era.
It does. And honestly, it also provides a very stark look at the gender dynamics of the time.
Oh, definitely.
The text contrasts the gallant man with the fop, which is, a foolishly vain man obsessed with fashion and appearances. It warns men not to be jays adorned with peacock feathers.
Which is a reference to the fable warning against dressing up in borrowed intellectual or social finery.
Right. And the index also reprimands libertines who boast of their debaucheries and men of good fortunes, which is just the polite 19th century way of describing seducers.
Yeah, quite a polite euphemism.
But then, when the text turns its attention to women, the categories change dramatically. It targets women's pretensions to beauty, the illusions of self-love, a concept called prudery or beguilism, and voluntary blindness.
Yeah, the focus suddenly shifts from a failure of public utility to a failure of physical presentation and social grace.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I look at this list and I immediately see a glaring double standard.
Oh, for sure.
It seems like the men are getting slapped on the wrist for acting a bit arrogant, puffing out their chests like peacocks or, bragging about their wild weekends. Meanwhile, the women are being subjected to deep psychological scrutiny for losing their looks, holding on to illusions of beauty, or displaying misplaced restraint.
It's very harsh.
It feels like this entire section on flaws is just a mechanism to enforce rigid gender roles, keeping women anxious about their appearance while the men get to run the commerce of the world.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because if we look closely at the specific pages, I'm thinking of pages 59 through 158. The expectations of the man of good company are intensely focused on a masculine ideal of public utility and social agility.
Right, he's out in the world actively managing it.
Exactly. And this really contrasts with other texts from around the same period or slightly earlier. Like, if you think about a text like The Female Instructor, that was entirely about domestic management.
Oh, yeah. Keeping the household running, managing servants, that sort of thing.
Right. Women were pushed toward managing the home, while men were instructed on how to navigate the public sphere. But even for the men, the rules were shifting. In the 1700s, you had these incredibly rigid, specialized hierarchies at court. You knew your place based on a very strict set of rules.
You didn't really have to navigate. You just had to exist in your slot.
Exactly. But by 1810, this commerce of the world requires dynamic navigation. So it is entirely valid to read the text as an enforcement of a patriarchal structure. The standards were undeniably gendered.
Yeah, they really were.
But we also have to analyze the specific consequence the author describes for these infractions. The text introduces the concept of the public's revenge on vain women and casts them as tragic figures, the deceived women.
Wait, why does the public need to take revenge?
Because, regardless of gender, the overarching sin the author is attacking is foolish affectation. It's the absolute absence of self-awareness.
Oh, I see.
The commerce of the world relies on everyone understanding their place and value in the room. So a man boasting of his conquests and a woman clinging to faded beauty are actually committing the exact same crime against the social order. They're refusing to accept reality.
Right, they're inflating their own currency beyond its actual value.
Yes. When a person lacks that severe self-examination, they force the rest of the room to either participate in their delusion or awkwardly puncture it.
Neither of which is fun.
No. Even the critique of prudery, that beguilism, is about this disruption. Prudery isn't genuine virtue here. It's a loud, performative refusal to participate in the normal, easy flow of social exchange. It draws all the attention back to the ego.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Both the fop and the prude bankrupt the social transaction because they make everyone else manage their unearned affectations.
They become a massive tax on the energy of the room. I mean, we've all been around someone who requires constant reassurance or who loudly performs their own moral superiority. It is exhausting.
Truly draining.
So having mapped out all these traps, the danger of envy, the vulnerability of boasting, the tax of foolish affectation, the index finally arrives at the solution. It provides the actual formula for how the man of good company should communicate to survive.
Yes, and the author advocates for the pursuit of the golden mean, or the juste milieu. This is the practical application of everything we've just discussed.
The index specifies that achieving this golden mean requires clearness and precision in language and the use of short elements of politeness. It explicitly warns against being too loud and dominating the conversation, but interestingly, it equally warns against being silent people.
Right, you can't just hide.
Exactly. You have to strike a very specific balance to showcase your talents and master what the author calls the tone of good company.
The instruction to use short elements of politeness is really key there. It implies that your interactions should be efficient and crisp.
Get in, get out.
Yeah. You contribute enough to prove your value to the commerce of the room, but you never linger long enough to expose yourself to envy or demand undue praise. You occupy the space without consuming it.
I read this and immediately pictured the modern struggle of navigating a social media algorithm.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. Finding the golden mean in 1810 sounds exactly like trying to maintain a public profile today. You have to be engaging, witty, and active enough to get noticed and build a following. But if you're too loud, too opinionated, or push a boundary just a little too far, you step on a landmine and your reputation is destroyed.
It's a very fine line.
It is. You're constantly trying to maximize your visibility while minimizing your risk of cancellation.
This raises an important question, though. If we view the tone of good company purely as a risk mitigation strategy, doesn't it just become another form of false appearance? Like, are we just advocating for a highly polished, algorithmic inauthenticity?
Yeah, that is the danger, isn't it? Becoming a perfectly pleasant, empty shell.
It's a real danger.
Huh.
But the author does provide a crucial distinction. Mastering this tone wasn't about being fake. The text defines it as the application of good sense and good grace.
Good sense and good grace.
Yeah, it was the necessary social lubricant. In a world fraught with fragile egos and toxic envy, the golden mean allowed people to actually engage, to debate, to negotiate, to share ideas without triggering a social collapse. It's really a proactive strategy for maintaining your own power through grace and ambiguity.
It basically creates a safe harbor for actual relationships to form. And I actually noticed a surprisingly emotional detail tucked away near the end of the index. The author references Pliny the Younger's regret over losing a virtuous friend.
That inclusion is deeply telling.
Yeah, it really stood out.
It anchors the entire manual. It proves that despite all the talk of commerce and maneuvering, the ultimate goal of being good company isn't just about party tricks or surviving the room.
Right.
It's about creating the conditions where genuine human connection can survive the toxicity of society.
So what does this all mean? When we take a step back from this 1810 index, we see that to be considered good company, whether in a 19th century Parisian salon or a 21st century boardroom, requires a very specific set of skills.
It really does.
It demands a hidden, unalterable moral fortitude. It requires a profound allergy to empty flattery, both in begging for it and in giving it insidiously. It requires a hyper-awareness of your own flaws to ensure you aren't taxing the room with foolish affectation. And ultimately, it requires the conversational agility to walk that golden mean.
It is an incredibly rigorous standard. I mean, it requires you to manage your own ego with such absolute precision that you have the surplus energy required to navigate the fragile egos of everyone else around you.
It's a lot of work, and I want you, the listener, to think about your own social circles, your own daily commerce of the world. Look at the people you spend your time with.
Yeah, take an inventory.
Are you surrounding yourself with gallant individuals who possess that quiet strength of soul? Or are you investing your energy in important people without importance? People who are desperately trying to project a value they don't actually hold?
That's the real test.
More importantly, I want you to look inward. When you enter a room, are you distributing genuine value, or are you taking that perilous leap and waiting for everyone else to catch you?
It's a standard of self-examination that forces you to strip away the performance and look at the actual substance of your interactions.
It truly is. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on the nature of this digital artifact. We have just spent this entire time reconstructing the deep psychological and social worth of an individual based entirely on a simple table of contents written over 2 centuries ago.
Which is incredible to think about.
Imagine for a moment that a historian 200 years from now uncovers a simple index summarizing your digital life.
Oh boy.
Right. A categorized table of contents of your text threads, your emails, your social media feeds, and your daily interactions. If they only had the index of how you treated people, what rules of good company would they assume you were following?
That is a terrifying thought.
Would your map lead them toward a legacy of good sense, good grace, and genuine connection? Or would it lead them straight into a field of your own unexamined ego?